Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Jessica. I'm a program assistant with Coach Art, and we're an organization that creates a transformative arts and athletic community for families impacted by childhood chronic illness. Today on Coach Art Facebook Live tutorials, I'm going to be going over how to paint a watercolor butterfly. So I have an example butterfly for you guys. This is just a sample one that I've done so you can kind of get an idea of what we're going to be doing today. I love watercolor because it's a lot of fun. It's super beginner friendly and very flexible. It leaves a lot of room for mistakes. So if you have never tried watercolor before, or if you're already experienced with watercolor, it's going to be a lot of fun. So today, you're going to need to go ahead and grab your watercolor palette. This is just the one that I have. You're also going to need a pencil, some water, and then your watercolor paper. So you're going to want to make sure to use watercolor paper instead of regular paper just because the watercolor paper is a little bit more dense and it's specifically for use with watercolor. That way that you won't create holes in the paper if you use regular paper. We don't want your art to be ruined. And then I also have a little bit of salt here. So the salt's going to be for something fun, a little bit closer to the end of the tutorial. Okay, yeah. I also have these Q-tips. I like to use Q-tips when I do watercolor, just to help me dab up any extra paint that I have since we are using a lot of water. But if you have paper towels, that works just as fine. So for the rest of the tutorial, I'm actually going to go ahead and shift the camera to my desk here so that you can see what I'm doing. So yeah, go ahead and join me as you get set up too. I'm gonna try and position it so that you can see the colors that I'm going into, how I'm mixing things. Do the best of my ability. Awesome. Okay. So I like to start out with a light sketch of what I'm going to be drawing, especially if I've never really drawn it before or if I want it to be just a little bit neater and less freehand. Butterflies are a good example of something to draw out beforehand just because of the symmetrical wings. So I'm going to start with the body just to give me a base of something to draw the wings off of. And it's just a light cylinder. Sorry you might not be able to see my pencil drawing as well right now. It's just because I don't want it to show up too much in the drawing itself. So that's something else you can keep in mind if you're drawing alongside me. You'll definitely not want to draw too hard, especially if you're going to be using lighter colors for your butterfly. So now I'm just going to go ahead and draw the wings. If you want, you can use a reference photo for a butterfly you see and maybe you want to replicate. I am sort of going off of the one that I drew earlier and I'm going to see where that gets me. I gave it a little dip at the end of the bottom wing there for a little bit of flare. So now we have one side. The second side is going to be a little bit harder, so don't worry about it being exactly even right now because you will be painting over it. So if you don't like the way it looks right now, that's also perfectly fine. You might not even keep these lines. It's more so just a guide so that you're not painting blind. Another little dip down here. Awesome. So once you have the basic sketch of your butterfly down, I'm going to go ahead and choose whichever color you're going to use for your butterfly. Today I'm thinking of going in with a bit of red. I'm feeling a little fiery today. So you're going to do a red. I'm gonna use, let's see, I'm gonna use this red here. And I'm just gonna go in with my clear water, which I have in my hand right here, and wet my brush and dip it into the paint here. And it's gonna just create a nice little puddle in there just to load some color up. And I'm gonna create a separate puddle on the side here. And I'm gonna add just a dab of water, not too much. That way I don't have to keep going back into my clean water when I want to add more water to the color here. Okay. Let's see. I think I'm satisfied with my color. You can always go back on with watercolor and darken up the layers, which is another reason why I love watercolor, because it's so forgiving. So I'm going to start with the bottom wing here, and I'm just going in with um, my wet brush with some of the wet red paint that I picked up on it here. My paper was dry when I started. Some people will start a watercolor painting with a wet page, but I am going to go ahead and start with the dry page just because it's going to give me a lot more control over where my paint is going, especially since I'm trying to follow this outline here and keep my wings symmetrical. I'm just going in and adding color for the bottom wing. Once that's nice and filled up, and that's okay that the color's a bit light, I'm gonna go ahead and start to do the middle of the top wing. I'm gonna leave it out, the outer edges, white for now, because I think I'm gonna have those be a different color. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm thinking black, so I'm just gonna leave those edges uncolored for right now. Of course, though, you can do any design you would like. So if you want the entire wing to be a certain color, feel free to put your own tweak on this at home. So you'll see I'm going back into the separate colorful water puddle that I have here, instead of going back into the pan of paint itself. And that's because this is going to be a much more pigmented color. Going back into the separate puddle that I have here is going to help me keep everything nice. And if I want, I can still change the color or add a layer on top without it being so visible. So I like to start paler and then add on with the watercolor. Awesome. So we have one side here that's painted. You'll see I left the rim. Oh, it's over here. I left the rim white around the edge. So I think I'm going to go in with a different color. So for the left side of the butterfly, I'm just going to do the same thing. I am going to go back into the red here, and that's just to pick up a little bit of fresh color for the other side. Oh, I see there's a link shared for inspiration for butterfly ideas, guys. So if you want to go and check out a couple of different butterfly colors and types, maybe you'll see one that you think is really pretty and you want to replicate. If your color isn't moving as freely on the paper, you might just want to add a little bit more water to that. So if you find that it's just way too dry and it's not sort of traveling around the page as easily as it seems to for me, that's just because your brush is probably a little too dry And since the page is also dry, it makes it hard for the color to move around. But it's a very easy fix. We're just coloring in all of the spots here. Again, I'm replicating what I did on the first side, so I am gonna leave the edge white at the top there. Now my wings aren't exactly identical, so I'm going to just erase here. I'm able to see that as I'm painting. And the really nice thing about watercolor too is you can, if you do it light enough on the first layer, you can also erase some of the watercolor if you make a mistake, just so that's pale enough for you to cover it up. But I just went ahead and I erased the tip of the wing there, and I'm just going to cover it with paint. I'm not going to retrace it. I'm just going to follow the other side. So you'll see I'm kind of going outside of my guidelines a little bit, and I'm trying to even up the wings here. So it's really nice, so I can kind of see, I have the trace there to follow, and then I can go back and update it as I see I need to. All right, awesome. So that first layer looks pretty nice, guys, I think. Let me check in. Nice, okay. Thanks for sharing, Kimberly. I'm sure you're doing awesome so far. So we're gonna go in with a second coat, guys. What's also a really cool trick to do is if you use a light color, let's say you want to go in with a slightly different color. So let's say since this is a very light red, I wanted to go in with a purple for my second coat. It could kind of create like a gradient effect, which is also really cool. I'm thinking I'll probably, I'll show you a bit of that in a second with a different color. I'll choose a good complementary color to go with the red. But we're gonna go ahead, I'm going into the red paint here, and I'm just loading up on some more color. It was still a bit wet from earlier when I wet it, but if yours dried out, you can go ahead and just go back into your clean water and add a little bit more water to the pot and just reactivate that color. All right, awesome. So now you'll go back in with the second layer, and you'll use this layer to add a little bit more detail and also darken up the areas where you want to be dark. I definitely want the bottom outer layer to be a dark, vibrant red. So I'm going to go ahead and try not to dilute it out with as much water this time. Let's see. And then I went ahead and I rinsed my brush and I picked up a little bit more water, and that was just sort of blended out into the rest of the painting so that the color lines weren't so harsh. The purple could actually look pretty good, guys, as a transition color to show you that you can add another color if you want after. So I think I will show you guys that. I'm not really pressing too hard on the paper here. So my brush has water, and if you, it's pretty loaded up with the water here. So if you get close to the page and you just dab on lightly, the paint will do a lot of the work for you. And if your page is a little bit too wet and you think you want to add color somewhere, but all of the water is moving around, you can get a little piece of your paper towel or you can grab your Q-tip. And I'll show you here, if you just dab in, you'll end up creating a white spot because it's just going to collect all of that paint there. And that way, if you make a little mistake, it's really easy to fix. Or if you want to pick up some of that paint that you spread around, it's also a really good way to add some detail, some spotting maybe to your butterfly if you want. So I'm bringing the paint upwards, and I'm doing a different paint stroke here. So before I was kind of just lightly adding the color to the page and sort of dropping it on. Now I'm doing a bit drier strokes, but I'm trying to get a little bit of pattern into that butterfly here without being too obvious about it. So I'm just giving it some stripes, and that's also easy to do if you just go back into your color palette here, and instead of going into the water again, you just add the darker color on top, and it's just going to give it some of the areas some definition. I'm going to dab some of this extra water over here. The water is really nice to have on the page if you want to do like drop color, which will help sort of put a spot of pigment of color onto the page. But it's a lot harder to control where it goes if the page is too wet. So that's also something to keep in mind if you're having a difficult time managing the color on your page. You might just want to dry it up a bit. Awesome. I think that looks pretty cool. I gave the wing up here um, some how would you describe that? A bit of a flare. I'm gonna do the same to the other side. So I'm just going ahead and adding in some color, a darker red. And you'll kind of get the hang of, how much color you want to be picking up to water, depending on how you want your butterfly to look. If you want it to have certain details in a certain area versus another. The more you sort of get into the painting, the more you'll pick up on the small nuances of your specific brush and paint that you're using. I'm going to add a little bit more water here just to spread the color a little faster. Cool. And I'm going to do the same pattern idea with, I don't know how to, is it like a fan design? I'm not sure how I would describe this technique that I'm doing here. A slight draw brush. Like I just want to get some texture there on the wing. I don't think I'm gonna add any more color. Awesome. Let's see. So I think what I'm gonna do next is show you guys a little trick because I also want to get some texture down here on the bottom. So while this is still a little bit wet here, I'm going to grab the salt that I had prepared earlier, just a little pinch, and I'm just going to sprinkle some on the page on the bottom of the wing. And I might also go back in and drop a little bit more water as well. Going into my clean water. I'm dropping a little bit of water onto the page. Might add some colored water there. So you might notice some of the color get absorbed in the salt. So what the salt is going to do is create like a speckled effect. So I'm going to show you my sample one here. You'll notice all of the little grains and details in the watercolor. I didn't paint that myself. That was definitely because of the salt technique that I'm using now. And it does need to dry a little bit, and I want to try and show you guys what it looks like before we end the tutorial. So I'm going to do it a little early so that hopefully it will be dry. So I'm wetting the other side just like I wet the first side. You need it to be a little bit wet so that the salt has something to absorb and leave a mark with. I'm using my nail as like a little scoop to get the salt onto the page. You don't need a whole lot. You kind of just do it randomly. It's gonna look super cool no matter how you do it. And if you don't have any salt, you could, I think sugar would probably also be a good substitute. Anything grainy and tiny. All right, so we're gonna let that dry. And as I said before, I'm gonna go in and show you guys how to use a different color technique and sort of like have it gradient in. So I left the outer rims here open and I'm gonna do it with a nice purple. So I'm cleaning off my brush completely. I'm just going in the water here and rinsing it off. My water is slightly pink now, but that's okay. And then we're gonna dry off the brush just to make sure there's no color coming off there. You're gonna get it wet again and go into the color of your choice, which for me is the purple. I'm gonna go with the purple down here. Looks very royal to me. And same with the red. I'm just gonna go ahead and try to activate this color still in the pot. It's a little off camera there, sorry about that. And I'm gonna start another puddle over here on this side. I don't need as much because I'm not gonna be covering the same amount of space as I was with the red. All right, awesome. So I'm gonna start on this side, the purple, and start by outlining the bottom just to give it a nice sort of transition. And then I'm gonna bring it up here. So this is the trim of the butterfly. Its wings. It's a very pretty purple, I think. Okay. So I'm filling in all of the white space that I left blank earlier, and I'm also covering some of the wing here to give the wing a little bit more of a design too. So I created a little cap here, or a point, a rounded bottom triangle shape for my wing. And I'm going to go back into a little bit of the red water to give, a little bit too dark there. I'm going to rinse off. To give it a little bit more of a transition into that. And I'm also going to soften up these edges here. Just adding a little bit of water to the tips of them. What's really awesome about watercolor is that for the most part, you can edit a lot of your work with just a little water. So you'll see that the ends of that start to fade out, but not completely to where you can't see them, just so that it doesn't look so harsh. Awesome! That looks pretty cool. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do the other side now. In the same way, I might have to go back up and do some cover work here because my pencil line is a little, I'm actually gonna pause. Let me erase some of it. My pencil line is a little dark and I wasn't sure if I was gonna use black for the outline or not. I think I'm not going to, and I don't want that to show. You do kind of want to be careful erasing next to the water because you can smear and also leave little erasing marks on your page by accident. Okay, cool. I got rid of a lot of that, so that should help hopefully cover up the accidental line markings were there. It's a little still follow. Same, let's see, getting a little bit more water there. We're following the same wing pattern as we did on the other side, creating that tip for the hats there in the purple color. Let's see, I'm just gonna turn it this way. It's a little bit easier to paint sometimes if you adjust the page angle. And also, it's completely okay if your wings aren't exactly even. Although it may look like it, nature is not perfectly symmetrical all of the time. So it's okay for the wings to be sisters, not twins. So this side looks a little bit darker to this side than me, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get a little bit of extra paint on there and just try to darken up some of the areas. And also sort of even out some of these lines here and bring that purple all the way down. And then we're gonna go clean my brush off again, get a little bit of fresh water, go into this red paint, and just start to fuzz these lines out again. I'm also kind of trying to bring it up some because it looks a little bit longer on this side. So I'm evening it out a bit. Okay. see. And then also same as last time, I am going to blend the purple color into the light red wings. We're just adding some more of that red paint there and spreading it out across the paper. Now, if you wanted, you could have also just completely painted the entire wing over with the second layer of the color of your choice. You could also do this outline black, which looks really nice. And those are just a couple of other examples in case you wanted to try. Don't be afraid to try it and do something a little bit varied. You'd be surprised by how cool some of these paintings can end up looking. Okay, so we're gonna let that dry. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more pizzazz to this side too. Adding a couple details. Okay. All right. The next thing we're gonna have to do is the body. So I'm gonna go in with a dark brown for the body. You could do a black as well. And I'm cleaning off my brush to get any of that paint off. Going with the brown here. I'm just gonna dab some over here to make sure it is a brown. Sometimes the colors can look a little different dried than they are wet, so I'm just doing a test first. Definitely brown. Okay. I'm gonna add a little water. Don't need too much of this. And I'm just gonna fill in the body here. I'm gonna create a little circle for a head. And then do some more log-like motions down the rest of the body. They're like mini ovals. I left a couple of the spaces white here. When I go back with detail, I'm just gonna add a little bit darker brown. I'm gonna fill in those just to create the illusion of like a curved body here. Okay, I'm also gonna go over my tips here of the wing with the brown and trail it down at the bottom. That's just to incorporate that color of the butterfly into the rest of the butterfly, so it's a little bit more thematic and uniform. And I'm also going to use this color to draw on the antennae, and give them some small ones. Like that. And as the paint dries, if you feel like there are some areas where you want to go ahead and add some more paint, I like to keep some of the areas a little bit lighter than others because it gives the effect of some dimension. I'm also going to trail that brown color that I still have on my brush up here on the side of the wings. Once again, just to sort of incorporate that color and also to smooth out some of the line work down here that I have. All right, awesome. I think that so far our butterfly is coming out Pretty nice. So at the bottom here, our salt is starting to dry. So while that's drying, we can do two things. If you want, you can add more designs to your butterfly. You can add more color. I think I am going to go back into the purple really quickly and add to the antennae just a little bit of color. Make it a little bit more whimsical and fun. And I'm also going to add a dark color to the tip here. Just to add another element of design to my butterfly. And I'm doing the same to the other side. I like to sign all of my paintings. It's typically one of the last things that I do. Let's see, I'm gonna go in with, I like this purple color a lot too. So I'm gonna go in with the purple again, and at the very bottom, right hand corner, very lightly, I'm just going to write my initials. So now for the salt portion. If it's still a little bit too wet, you might not be able to brush it off. You're going to want to give it about another 10 minutes or so, depending on how many other drawings or effects you want to add to your butterfly. You could have also done it up here, which would have been really fun. It does take a little bit of time to dry, but once it does, you can brush it away. Still a little bit wet here. You'll brush it away. So you'll just lightly move all of that salt off. And as you'll start to see, at least on this side here, the little speckles are gonna start to appear underneath the salt. If you move it too early and it starts to smudge the paint around, don't fret. Just put that salt, that color salt, right back on there, add a drop of water, let it dry, and the effect will still come out. Like I said, watercolor is super forgiving. Yeah, so I will post this butterfly once it's fully dried on the Coach Art Facebook page for you guys. But this is our final butterfly. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.